Let's be real. We all know the story of Bill Gates, right? The genius Harvard dropout who tinkers in his garage and builds Microsoft into one of the biggest companies on the planet. I mean, it's the classic American dream story, a tale of pure talent and relentless hard work. But what if? What if that's not the whole story?
Wow, I mean, that's a pretty bold statement, isn't it? It kind of flies in the face of everything we've been told about the self-made billionaire. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack that very idea and take a look at the hidden forces that were at play in one of the world's most incredible success stories.
So first things first, let's just quickly revisit the legend of Bill Gates that we all know and love. I mean, the timeline is just wild. He finds his passion for computers in middle school, starts a company while he's still in high school, practically aces the SATs, and gets into Harvard. Then, of course, comes the famous move. He drops out to start Microsoft with his buddy Paul Allen. They land a game-changing deal with IBM, and boom, by the age of 31, he's a billionaire. It's meteoric. And you can't deny it, it is a deeply inspirational story. It's the ultimate example of what could happen when you combine raw intelligence, incredible passion, and, the sheer guts to leave a place like Harvard to follow your dream. It's a story that has absolutely motivated millions of people. But is that really the whole picture? Was it truly just talent and grit that launched him into the stratosphere?
And this is where we get to the missing piece of this giant puzzle.
And that missing piece has a name: privilege. Now, let's be clear. This word isn't meant to take away from his hard work at all. It just refers to the unearned advantages that someone gets simply because of who they are, where they were born, and the circumstances they happen to be born into.
All right, so let's really get into it. Let's break down the specific and honestly kind of mind-blowing advantages that created the absolute perfect storm for Bill Gates to succeed. First, we have to talk about the era he grew up in. Just being a white male in America in the 1960s and 70s gave you a head start, a baseline of opportunity that, frankly, just wasn't available to most other people.
And get this, at Harvard, the very university Bill Gates got into, the ratio of men to women was 4-to-1. That was the rule until 1977. Just think about what that means. It means that for a woman to get one of those few spots, she had to be way, way more qualified than her male counterparts just to get her foot in the same door.
And if you look at the economy back then, it was just as lopsided. In 1963, for every single dollar a man earned, a woman doing the exact same job earned just 59 cents. Things like getting capital to start a business, or even just getting a credit card without a husband's signature, were massive hurdles. The racial barriers, though, were even more profound. Remember, the Civil Rights Act only passed in 1964. The whole country was in turmoil. So in 1968, while a young Bill Gates was freely walking into computer labs and spending hours and hours honing his coding skills, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. For a person of color at that time, the main struggle was for basic human rights, not getting extra programming time. So it wasn't just who he was, it was also where he was. His location and his family's socioeconomic status were another huge piece of the puzzle.
To really put this into perspective, you have to understand just how absurdly rare computers were back then. In 1965, for a U.S. population of 200 million people, there were only about 22,000 computers in the entire country. Having access to one would be like having a private spaceship in your backyard today. Seriously.
And here's the kicker. Bill Gates had access to one of these incredibly rare machines because his parents had the money to send him to Lakeside, a super elite private school. This wasn't some random lucky break. It was a direct result of his family's wealth. He was able to log thousands of hours of programming practice before most people on Earth had even seen a computer. That's not a head start. That's a different race entirely. And that leads us to the final and maybe the most powerful advantage of all, his family. They didn't just provide support. They provided a financial safety net and, crucially, unbelievable connections.
Let's talk about that famous decision to drop out of Harvard. It's a key part of the legend, right? The ultimate act of rebellious genius. But it was a risk he could afford to take because his family was wealthy. Now, compare that to Monty Davidoff. He was a brilliant programmer who helped write Microsoft's very first major piece of software. But he couldn't afford to drop out with them. His dad owned a small store, and he needed that degree. So you see, dropping out wasn't just an act of courage, it was a luxury.
And then you have the IBM deal. This is the moment that changes everything for Microsoft. So how on earth does this tiny, basically unknown company even get in the room with a titan like IBM? Well, it turns out Bill's mother, Mary Gates, happened to sit on the board of a nonprofit with the chairman of IBM. She put in a good word for her son's little company at exactly the right moment.
And that connection, that single introduction, opened the door to the deal that would change the world. So, after hearing all that, what does this story really mean for us? How should we think about our own lives and what it takes to be successful?
Well, it introduces us to this idea called privilege blindness. It's that natural human tendency to kind of overlook all those unearned advantages and to say that success is only because of someone's individual talent and hard work. And again, it's not about blaming anyone, it's about seeing the full context.
You see this kind of logic all the time, right? Someone points to a huge exception, like Barack Obama becoming president, and uses it to argue that a huge systemic problem like racism just doesn't exist anymore. But the thing is, these incredible, extraordinary exceptions don't disprove the rule. In many ways, they actually highlight just how tough the path is for everybody else.
And let's be absolutely clear here. None of this is to say that Bill Gates isn't a brilliant person or that he didn't work unbelievably hard. He is, and he absolutely did. The goal here is just to acknowledge a simple truth. Not everyone starts the race from the same starting line. Real, lasting success is always a complicated mix of talent, hard work, timing, and yes, opportunity.
So as we wrap this up, it really leaves us with a question to reflect on. Beyond your own hard work and your own talents, what are the invisible advantages, the lucky breaks, the family support, the simple circumstances of your birth that have acted like a tailwind, pushing you forward on your own journey? Because thinking about that, it gives all of us a much richer and I think much more honest way of understanding what success really is.